Hi, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mrs. Pullen for lesson 8.02. This is the third video. And in this video, we're going to graph one cycle of the function y equals negative cosine 1/2 x. The first thing we're going to do is establish the pattern for the general cosine of x function. We're going to use our unit circle and pull off the x-coordinate from our quadrantal angles. So at 0, it's 1. At pi over 2, it's 0. At pi, it's -1. At 3 pi over 2, we're back to 0. And at 2 pi, we're back to 1. We make a nice smooth curve. Again, normally the function would be max, mid, min, mid, max. But notice that there's a negative in front of the function. When that happens, you're going to actually flip the function over the x-axis. So let's get a different color out here. So you would actually start off at -1, then go back to the midline, then go back to the maximum value, then the midline, and then the minimum value. So when you see a negative in front of the function, that flips the function over the x-axis. So now the pattern is not our usual pattern. It's close, but it's reflected over. So and only when you have a negative for cosine in front of there, it flips it over and you're starting off with the minimum value, then going to our midline, then going to our maximum value, back to our midline, and back to our minimum value. We're now going to pull off the amplitude, frequency, and to calculate the period for this function. The amplitude is always positive, so you're taking the absolute value of -1 and getting 1. The frequency, again, is the number between the name of the function and the angle. So in this case, it's 1/2 curve in 2 pi. That's what we would expect to see. The period of the function is calculated as 2 pi over 1/2. So 2 pi divided by 1/2 is 4 pi. We're also going to need our sketch point. To calculate the sketch point, let me just switch colors here so it's more visible. You're going to take the period and divide by 4. So in this case, our period is 4 pi. When I divide by 4, I get pi. That means that the spacing between the points is pi units. So what are our values? Our minimum values is the negative the amplitude. So in this case, it's -1. Right now, since we have no vertical shift, we'll talk about that in a future lesson. Our baseline is just the x-axis, which is y equals 0. The maximum value of this function is the amplitude, so it's going to be 1. And our midline again is 0, and our minimum value is -1. We can still maintain the same scale for the x-axis the y-axis, where every 2 boxes is 1. You can actually spread it out, but I tend to be consistent. To get our spacing on our x-axis, our scale on our x-axis rather, we have 14 boxes. We're only graphing one cycle. That means we have enough room for every 2 boxes is equal to 1 point. Since our sketch point is equal to pi, I can count by pi's. Pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, and 4 pi. We're now ready to graph the function, so let me get out, let's try to purple. To sketch the points, And so in this case, our graph is starting out with a minimum value of -1. We then go to the midline of 0, the maximum value of 1, back down to the midline of 0, and back down to our minimum of -1. We make a nice smooth curve and make sure to label. What you should notice is that this is a flipped over cosine curve. And if I were to go ahead and um, take a look at take a look at 2 pi, I'm going to just draw that line down here. I notice that I only see a half of a flipped over cosine curve in 2 pi.